An offer from an unusual partner. China proposing a deal to fund a nearly $3 billion dam project located in Silicon Valley's largest water district. What's motivating the investment? Plus, land grabs, cyber malware, and spies. A communist threat is operating right under our noses. And it's known as the Chinese Communist Party. Unlike dangers posed by a real war, Beijing's weapon doesn't take the form of a swift invasion, but rather a long-term infiltration. Just how deep does the rabbit hole go? What do you think? Let us know below and subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Struggling to find investors, a 320-foot-tall dam project in Silicon Valley's largest water district has faced 6 years of delays. But last week, an unexpected investor came into the picture, China, ready to brave a price tag that has soared to almost $3 billion. What's driving the interest from one of the biggest U.S. rivals? NTD's David Lam has more from California.
California is still in need of water. In Northern California, the Santa Clara Valley Water District plans to build a 320-foot-tall dam and reservoir on Pacheco Creek, located near Highway 152 and Henry Coe State Park. Since 2017, the Water District hasn't found other water agencies to fund the $2.8 billion Pacheco expansion. However, an offer came to the table, recently disclosed at a public board meeting.
China, basically.
China that was the proposal that it came from a local developer.
The Mercury News reported that the Water District's CEO, Rick Callender, said a local developer called him about 5 months ago and said the Chinese government could pay some or all of the costs. Callender said he wasn't interested and questioned the legality over foreign government investing in Valley Water.
International organizations, including international governments, in the project, and I don't believe that due to how the funding has come towards us, I don't think that those would be acceptable or legal options that we'd be able to pursue.
International?
Correct.
Somebody from an international, they want to invest and make the money off it. So
that was one of the proposals that was.
So they make money off selling the water.
That is correct.
Congressman Kevin Kiley said on X, formerly known as Twitter, that China senses an opportunity. Quote, "The Chinese Communist Party has previously built dams in Cambodia, Laos, and Pakistan as a way to expand political influence." Jim Beal, board member and former state senator, was concerned he hadn't heard of this proposal. Callender said he didn't know who China's customers would be. Callender cited concerns that a foreign interest can own the reservoir, sell it, and gain money, saying, "It's so far from our tax base, it doesn't make sense." The new Pacheco Dam would expand the reservoir capacity by 25 times. But opponents believe the dam will harm the environment and money should go towards more sustainable projects such as water recycling. In Santa Clara, California, David Lam, NTD News.
Whoever controls the water controls the future. It's a strategy Beijing seems to be taking note of. It started decades ago when the Chinese Communist Party broke ground on the first of its now over 330 dams across 74 countries. All of that infrastructure helping to expand its global influence. Let's zoom in.
Chinese banks are the biggest financiers of dam projects globally. About 2/3 of those China-funded projects are located in Asia and Africa. Before 2020, Chinese company had added over 8,000 megawatts of hydro capacity in sub-Saharan Africa, more than half the continent's previous total. Beyond that, China also funded a dam in Ecuador. The South American nation is right in America's backyard. The dam is the largest infrastructure project in the country and cost $2.7 billion. Earlier this year, thousands of cracks appear in the dam, threatening the country's largest power source. Zooming back out, why is China building dams overseas? Experts warn through these projects could help Communist China extend its overseas power. And coupled with technological advances, cheap labor, and state financial support, that expansion is growing even faster. Most of China's projects are organized under the country's Belt and Road Initiative. The plan is widely seen as a form of debt trap diplomacy in the West, used to bring lesser developed countries under Chinese debt, which Beijing can then leverage to gain rights to the overseas infrastructure it helps build.
Dams, farmlands, and America's power grid. All of them appear to be on Communist China's radar.
There's this transformer was seized by the federal government the year before, 2019.
Tommy Waller, the director of state legislative outreach at the Center for Security Policy, sheds light on a would-be electricity crisis traced back to power transformers that were made in China.
If this device that we depend on for the lifeblood of our modern civilization was able to be manipulated, if it was able to be turned off, then that could be extremely problematic for us.
Transformers are a critical part of our power grids. Without them, electricity can't be delivered to homes and businesses. The U.S. has been purchasing China-made transformers thanks to their low selling prices. But concerns about them are rising. Above all, that China might be able to launch a long-distance attack on the U.S. power grid. Recognizing the risk, in 2020, former President Trump signed an executive order to block utilities from using gear from foreign adversaries, including China and Russia. The Biden administration repealed the rule.
And unfortunately, on the first day of the current Biden administration, that executive order was suspended. And so our nation's imported about another 100 transformers from China in the ensuing period. We're now somewhere around 400 in the U.S. grid.
Over 400 Chinese-made transformers are currently in operation in the U.S., and some of those just across the river from the Big Apple. A power plant in New Jersey bought a transformer from a Chinese company, JSHP. The plant powers at least 500,000 homes in New York City. The news made headlines in 2020. Looking at an earlier case, a U.S. utility company also bought a Chinese-made transformer, later discovering a component in the gear that shouldn't have been there. It's unclear how the device affects the transformer. A joint force is countering Chinese efforts to buy U.S. land. Over 80 bills from 33 states, lawmakers across the U.S. are aiming to restrict Chinese entities from buying U.S. land. A dozen of them have become law in states like Florida, Alabama, Idaho, and Virginia. The measures are facing backlash from some Chinese Americans. They argue the rules could lead to discrimination and hate crimes. Zooming out, Chinese companies or investors own over 380,000 acres of land in the U.S., about twice the size of New York City. It's a relatively small figure, but the key isn't how much land is owned, but where it's owned, and that's causing concerns. Here are some examples. A Chinese corn milling company bought land 20 minutes away from the Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota. A former Chinese general also bought land near the largest pilot training base run by the U.S. Air Force. That's in Texas. He controls over 40% of all Chinese-owned U.S. land. Smithfield Foods, America's largest pork producer, owns about another third. That's mainly in North Carolina. But Smithfield lost its American identity long ago. A Chinese pork company bought it up in 2013. The bulk of the rest is owned by Walton International Group in Arizona. Walton is a real estate management firm based in the state. Worth noting, Washington doesn't even have the most up-to-date information on how much land Chinese investors control on American soil. The most recent data, 380,000 acres, is from 2 years ago. The USDA relies on foreign buyers to report land deals on their own by filling out a form. But enforcement has been lax. Lawmakers are pushing for the agency to shift to an electronic filing system. But Congress hasn't approved funding for the transition, so it may take a while. Critics say Chinese influence efforts also go beyond the physical and have taken root in the digital realm, and a major source of it right at our fingertips. That's in the form of a short video sharing app that U.S. lawmakers have called a national security threat. TikTok was launched in 2016. It grew to become America's most downloaded app just 2 years later. Yet today, the app is facing global restrictions on who can use it.
It's a constant threat, and much of that threat is coming from outside the country of trying to infiltrate our systems and really impact our data.
New York City barred government workers from downloading the app on government-managed devices earlier last month, while the White House gave federal agencies 30 days to delete the app in February. In March, a House committee voted to fast-track a bill that would ban TikTok from all devices nationwide. So why all the pressure on TikTok? It all comes down to China, the home base of TikTok's parent company, ByteDance. FBI Director Christopher Wray warned in March that Beijing could use TikTok to control software on millions of devices in America. Does that accusation hold up? Half a year ago, TikTok CEO testified in the House. He stated,
"The American data has always been stored in Virginia and Singapore in the past, and access of this is on an as-required basis by our engineers globally."
Later in May, a Forbes investigation reported that TikTok had been storing U.S. user data on Chinese soil, including critical details like social security numbers and tax IDs for its paid content creators. Under that pressure, TikTok admitted American data had been handled differently, though it argued creators' data was treated as an exception.
I think we need to put all of our options on the table as to how we deal with TikTok, not just because they are collecting and storing surveilled information, but they are failing to tell the truth to America.
What's more, Australia's Financial Review recently revealed that software developers inside China are working on TikTok's code, adding these engineers can access user data and are subject to Beijing's intelligence and security laws. Under the laws, Beijing can force all entities and citizens to cooperate with so-called national intelligence efforts. Has Chinese tech giant Huawei been able to break through U.S. sanctions? That's what many are wondering after the company released a new smartphone model on Wednesday. At the heart of the debate is the device packed with 5G chips made in China. Because if it does, that would mean China's semiconductor industry has made significant advances. It would also suggest U.S. sanctions against Huawei are losing their teeth. Here's the background. Washington slapped sweeping sanctions on Huawei in 2019. Officials say the company is a Trojan horse for Beijing. That ban means Huawei can't get 5G chips made with U.S. technology. U.S. chipmaker Qualcomm was able to get permission to supply 4G chips to Huawei, but not the 5G. Huawei has kept the release low-key, without any major promotion campaigns, and with no mention of any new microchips on its product page. It also refused to provide details on the phone's specifications. Could your new electric car pose a national security threat? Research has revealed that electric car systems are susceptible to remote hacking by China, with vulnerable parts ranging from microphones to brakes. That's according to Christopher Balding, a surveillance expert and founder of the think tank New Kite Data Labs. NTD's Jane Wirrell spoke to him for details.
Hi, Christopher Balding. It's good to speak with you. In your recent report, you say China-made electric vehicle batteries are a clear security risk. Why is that?
Basically, they have the ability to control and interface with many different parts of the automobile, giving them access to lots of sensitive data and the ability to control those different systems. So that gives China a clear ability to do lots of things that we might not want them to do over Western automobiles.
So you say that it's not just about surveillance, but there's also a risk that the vehicle could be remotely controlled as well. How would that work?
Yes, so because the battery or even other systems may contain malicious code, this would give Chinese hackers, if they so chose to use that data, the ability not just to listen in or use that data in some way for surveillance, but to actually control various systems of the automobile, whether it was the microphone system or even the braking system.
Should we be concerned of the Internet of Things?
Well, we also know that China manufactures a lot of those Internet of Things devices, everything from headphones to components that may go into everything from ovens to cars. We know that they collect data on that internally, and so this creates absolutely a surveillance and security risk. And especially since a lot of those devices do not have the internet security that, say, a phone or a computer will, make them much more susceptible to hacking.
I mean, generally speaking, in terms of electric cars, how much of a security risk are they?
I think it's fair to say that it's a reasonably high security risk because Internet of Things and cars do not have the regular security updates that computers or phones have, and those are quite susceptible to targeted attempts at hacking. So I think it is very fair to say that this is absolutely a relatively high risk.
And what can people do to protect themselves from these risks?
I think the most obvious would be not buy Chinese-made automobiles. Chinese components are absolutely in a large number of cars, both electrical vehicle and gas turbine. But I think it's incumbent to learn more about any electrical vehicle, which probably has a significant amount of Chinese electronic components, but definitely not be buying Chinese-made automobiles.
Well, Christopher Boulding, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 2 years. Here's what to look out for in our second half. What's it like to be the first official Hong Kong asylee in the United States? Frances Hui first got involved in Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement at the age of 14. She witnessed firsthand a once democratic city gradually fall into the hands of a communist regime. From the umbrella movement to a so-called national security law unfolding before her eyes. American Thought Leaders host Jan Jekielek sat down with Hui to discuss her journey as a young freedom fighter. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epic TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you soon.